Thank you for listening to The Leader. Did you know we also do audio news bulletins through smart speakers? There's a new one at 7 every morning. Just ask for the news from the Evening Standard. And you can hear The Leader podcast every afternoon at 4 p.m. Subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode. Now, from the Evening Standard in London, this is The Leader.
Evening Standard, it's your Evening Standard.
Hi, I'm David Marsland. We are now in Phase 2 of the UK's coronavirus battle plan.
We've moved from a situation where we were mainly in contain to we're now basically mainly delay.
Chief Medical Officer Professor Chris Witty explained what that means to MPs earlier. We'll speak to our Deputy Political Editor Nicholas Cecil. Also,
as things stand, it's only the research department that seems to have been cleared.
Is this how coronavirus begins to bite? HSBC cleared an entire floor of its Canary Wharf HQ, and Flybe went bust with passengers already on flights. The Evening Standard's Jonathan Prynn says we can expect more. And this is Real Life in a Refugee Camp, the immersive experience being launched by the Imperial War Museum for its refugee season. Taken from the Evening Standard's editorial column, this is The Leader. For the whole thing, pick up the newspaper or head to standard.co.uk/comment. In a moment, after contain, delay, the next stage in the battle against coronavirus. It was inevitable, and it seems to have happened already. Coronavirus has broken containment.
What we're doing is putting greater and greater priority on the elements of this, which are delay. Now, actually, for the early stages of delay, contain and delay are very similar, not quite the same. And they're largely around finding early cases, isolating them, following their chains of transmission, where necessary, isolating those people.
That's Chief Medical Officer Chris Witty updating the Commons Health and Social Care Committee chaired by Jeremy Hunt. The UK has a 4-point plan to fight coronavirus: contain, delay, mitigate, research. Professor Witty said today that we're now mainly in delay. Our Deputy Political Editor Nicholas Cecil's in Westminster. Nicholas, what does mainly in delay mean?
Well, basically the government is, rather than now trying to contain the disease here, trying to stop it getting a hold in Britain, it will now seek to delay a major outbreak here. And the reason why they want to do that is that they want to push the outbreak back towards the spring or early summer. The reason for that is threefold. Firstly, it buys you time to develop medicines which might be effective against COVID-19. Importantly, it will also mean that the NHS is likely to be under less pressure because hopefully it would have got out of the winter pressure points by then. And additionally, there's a hope that the warmer weather will make it more difficult for the virus to spread.
Now, we don't really know an awful lot about what being in stage 2 of the battle plan means at the moment, do we, Nick?
No, this afternoon the government's Scientific Advisory Committee was due to meet, and they were going to discuss the various measures that you could take to try and slow down the arrival in a major outbreak of COVID-19. Some measures seem on the face of it to be very sensible, for example, like closing schools. That seems quite an obvious idea. But certainly Professor Witty was explaining actually it's quite a major move which could have a limited impact on the spread of coronavirus.
There's a range of things that we could do, ranging from things with almost no economic impact and high efficacy, top of the range, washing your hands, second, covering your mouth when you cough with a tissue, all the way down through to things that have major societal impact, like closing schools, which obviously affects on the children, but also on the parents and potentially on employment and on particular sectors of the economy.
So far, cases overseas where we've seen outbreaks in other countries, children tend to get the disease less, and certainly in not such a virulent way. And the main way of spreading it is when you've actually got symptoms. And children often are not developing severe symptoms, so they may actually pass it on less than adults.
And one other thing that Professor Witty spoke about during his meeting with the committee today was the use by other countries of things like apps to show people where infection hotspots are. And he said that there might be something similar coming to the UK, but he didn't want them to be too detailed, too street level, did he?
Yes, there's a bit of controversy here because the health chiefs announced yesterday that the regional breakdown of the figures would only be published weekly. And I think this is just one of those glitches which happens during these public health campaigns. And that message has been swiftly corrected today, and we will get daily updates. There may be 24 hours delay, and the reason for that is because they want to make sure that they're accurate, these figures. Other countries have been more specific, even giving street-by-street locations of cases. Professor Witty was reluctant to do this, basically because of concerns that you could stigmatise patients who've got the infection, and they could also face abuse on social media when they're just innocent victims like anyone else who gets the infection.
Some of the people who've had the infection, or some people who people think might have the infection, have had a lot of social problems and vilification in social media, and even occasionally in more mainstream media. And we are absolutely, I am as a doctor, am very against giving any patient identifiable information, and I think for this reason we should also be careful. So I'm not in favour of going down to street level or within 100 metres of a coronavirus. I think that is the wrong approach for this country.
A lot of people have been worried about getting on public transport, taking things like the tube. Was there anything on that said today?
Yes, Professor Witty was very clear about that. He said, yes, there is a risk of putting your hand on a handrail or something like that which has got coronavirus on it. And then if you wash your hands, he says, then you eliminate the risk, basically, of catching the infection. Basically, the advice is if you've been on the tube, if you've been on public transport, wash your hands. And this is very much the wider message, is just wash your hands frequently. And that's what the government is advising at the moment.
Next.
Got it. Just, I don't know how I feel yet. It's just very shocking.
Flybe passengers were getting on planes when the company went bust. We speak to consumer business editor Jonathan Prynn about what happened and separate coronavirus developments at HSBC in London. Companies all over the world have been planning what to do if coronavirus is found in their offices. In the UK, that's starting to happen. HSBC cleared out part of its London HQ after an employee tested positive for it. Our consumer business editor, Jonathan Prynn's following the story. And Jonathan, what do we know?
What we do know is that a research analyst tested positive for coronavirus a day or two ago, and as a result, the research floor at the Canary Wharf headquarters of HSBC has been cleared for a deep clean. And we understand that members of staff who have been in contact with this particular employee have been told to work from home for the time being.
So it's just the research floor, not the trading floor, as it been speculated?
No, the bank are insisting it's just the research floor. The trading floor is continuing to operate as normal. It's a huge building. There's 45 floors in the building, and as things stand, it's only the research department that seems to have been cleared. But as ever, it's a fast-moving situation, and we may know more before the end of the day.
It's likely we're going to see more of this sort of thing. Offices being closed, floors being closed, people working from home, isn't it?
I think it's completely inevitable. I mean, listening to what Professor Witty was saying this morning, it does sound as if we need to be prepared for fairly rapidly accelerating spread of infection. And as businesses have to face up to the fact that employees have the illness, they are going to have to close down at very short notice. Offices, restaurants, maybe museums, who knows? But I'm pretty sure this will be a sort of rolling story around London for several months to come.
And of course, one company that had to take some very quick action was Flybe, which collapsed as people were getting on planes last night.
Yeah, Flybe's been in trouble for a while. It had a recent financial injection that looked as if it might keep it going for a little while, but the coronavirus has had a big effect on bookings. People stopped travelling. That was the final straw for the airline. They called in the administrators 2:00 in the morning last night, as you say, more or less as people were preparing to get on early morning flights. The fourth airline British airline to collapse in the last 2 years. It's quite a vulnerable industry, and obviously one of the most vulnerable to the economic fallout from coronavirus.
Yeah, so we're seeing coronavirus in its terms probably picking that easy fruit, isn't it? These are the vulnerable industries are the ones going to be hit first, and then we're going to start to see more and more economic impact from this. And I wonder if that's going to be the big legacy of coronavirus. Lots of people are going to get sick, but actually we're going to see this huge sort of economic problem caused by a disease.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first global epidemic of the era of globalization, in a way. The world's so much more interconnected. So yes, there's the direct effects of people spending less. Restaurants in the West End have been very badly hit already. We're hearing that. Travel companies, airlines in particular, are going to suffer. But there's also, because of the interconnectivity of world trade now, particularly the supply lines coming out of China, which was obviously has been the epicenter of the illness so far. You know, China is the manufacturing capital of the world now, and businesses in the UK that depend on supply lines coming out of China are starting to feel the pain now, and that's going to increase and accelerate fairly quickly and could have quite a profound impact on the economy over the next few months, potentially sending us into recession, although most analysts are still saying we'll manage probably very slow growth in the next few months. But coronavirus recession is something that's very much a possibility.
And you can read more on that story online at standard.co.uk. Now, this is what it sounds like in a refugee camp. What you can hear is taken from footage shot by CNN inside the Moria camp on a Greek island. 18,000 people currently live there. The film will be part of an installation launching next month at the Imperial War Museum, and the Evening Standard's editorial column is welcoming it.
An immersive exhibition at the Imperial War Museum will allow visitors to experience what life is like in a refugee camp in Lesbos, currently receiving a surge in arrivals from Turkey triggered by fighting in the Syrian city of Idlib. It won't be pleasant and should remind us all of the need to find better solutions to the human tragedy, not just in Lesbos, but in similar camps worldwide.
Our arts correspondent Robert Dex joins me. Robert, what can people expect when they step into this camp?
I think people can expect essentially an audio-visual assault on the senses. The idea is to give some idea, and it can only be a notion of exactly what it's like in a camp originally built for about 2,000 people that is now home to tens of thousands of people.
How successful can an immersive thing like this be at helping people understand what life is actually like inside a refugee camp?
I think the museum has correctly identified the refugee problem as one of the most urgent issues of the time, and really that's what museums should be doing. Should be looking at things that are in the headlines but trying to get behind the headlines a bit and looking at some of the background. I think people have a tendency to think about the Imperial War Museum and war as battles and soldiers and winners and losers, and they very much see part of their mission as expanding that conversation and showing, if you like, the ripple effects that a war in a far-off country, of which we know nothing, to coin a phrase, the effect that can have and how it can come closer to our shores as well.
The artist Ai Weiwei's been given the entire atrium for a site-specific artwork, they say, and they've never done that before. What kind of an impact is that going to have on people, seeing that almost as soon as they arrive?
By putting his artwork on the floor, you will literally have to walk over it to get into the museum. So even before you see any other exhibits, he's already got you thinking about war, the effects of war on the wider world, refugees. Everyone that goes into the museum, as they go in and as they leave, will see his work. So he has literally a captive audience. He obviously famously covered the floor of Tate Modern in sunflower seeds. I mean, this won't be exactly like that, but it's on a similar scale. And there is something about seeing work that big. It is impossible to ignore, and that's precisely what he wants.
You can go and see that installation at the Imperial War Museum from April 2nd. And that's The Leader. We're back tomorrow at 4. Subscribe to make sure you don't miss it.